But today we are going to start with this big news, and you're going to get a different take coming out of me about the news today. Fox News settled, all right? $787.5 million. And that number is everywhere, and it's the whole story for everybody. And for me, it is just the beginning. I think they got off easy, okay, for a number of reasons in their suit against Dominion voting machines. And I don't like that there was a settlement. I told you that last night. I'll tell you more about it tonight. Now, we remember it was a $1.6 billion, right? That was what Dominion was asking for. Fox, for what? 2020 election lies. Again and again and again about Dominion's voting machines, okay? That led to harassment, death threats, but destroyed the goodwill of the business in their thing. But it did a lot to the media also, and that has to be kept in context, okay? The deal will prevent the network's biggest stars, Carlson, Hannity, Bartiromo, even Rupert Murdoch himself, from taking the stand, and I'm sure they didn't want that, right?
All right, people. John speaking, there's something you should know. Trump tried to shut down Fox News over a secret recording is false. What actually happened was he criticized the network for airing an interview with Senator Mark Kelly. The dramatic version stitches together unrelated events into a narrative that doesn't match documented reality. Trump's relationship with Fox News has honestly become one of the more fascinating storylines in conservative media over the past several years. Fox built a massive audience largely by being seen as friendly territory for Trump and his supporters. But that relationship has had some genuinely rocky moments, especially whenever Fox does something Trump perceives as disloyal or insufficiently supportive. Think about how unusual that dynamic actually is when you step back and consider it. Most people assume Fox and Trump exist in some kind of permanent, unconditional alliance.
Dominion had the receipts on just one level of discovery, but they also don't have to say anything to their audience as a function of this settlement. That's one of the big problems. All right, but let's get to the panel about this. So it is the biggest number we've ever seen attached to anything like this. Are you impressed by the number?
I am totally impressed by the number. And I predicted they were going to settle. I know you didn't want them to settle, but they had no choice but to settle because you can't put those stars on the air because they contradicted themselves.
On the stand.
On the stand because they contradicted themselves on the air. They lied about the election. But the great thing for the 2024 presidential election, it's going to be super tough for Donald Trump to get election lies and election disinformation into the marketplace now, because I don't think there's room for it anymore at Fox.
Why? Fox doesn't even have to apologize, Lindsay.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the problem, because I know I was speaking to friends earlier, and it was about the idea that everyone who watches Fox News might actually believe, let's say, the election was stolen from President Trump. But the difference as a journalist and their role, which you heavily understand, is that you have to have a team of producers or you work for yourself.
But the reality is more complicated than that. Trump has criticized Fox multiple times over the years whenever specific coverage decisions didn't match what he expected from a network so closely associated with his political base. And here's why this specific incident, the Kelly interview criticism, actually fits into a much longer pattern worth understanding. This isn't the first time Trump has publicly called out Fox for giving airtime to Democrats or for handling interviews in ways he felt were too soft. That pattern has repeated itself periodically throughout his political career.
You do the research, you look into things. And so particularly for me with Maria Bartiromo, who's one of the star anchors at Fox, like, you graduated from NYU, you are a journalist, you're on the board of trustees still at NYU, last time I checked. So you would have to admit that you as a journalist knew your role there and you actively pursued pushing lies to the viewers. And I think that's more important to me than any number. And so I was actually impressed that they were planning on going to trial. I think it was the dumbest decision that Fox was going to make, but obviously they chose what made sense for them and they decided to settle.
And just to be clear, Anthony is obviously a Republican. You have very conservative views yourself, and you. I mean, you're just a big question mark.
I'm glad.
You're an independent.
I said I was an obvious Republican. It was a little derogation.
I thought you were Catholic.
No. I'm saying you're like a real Republican.
It hurt my feelings.
You're not on
it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, you're not on the red.
I was just checking. Okay.
Well, look at this guy. He's trying to make friends, Mooch.
Right.
He's trying to make friends.
Dominion hit the jackpot. I don't know how they were gonna show $800 million in damages. I'm happy that they settled because as a reporter,
showing that even historically friendly outlets aren't immune from his criticism when specific coverage choices don't align with his expectations. The relationship between Trump and Fox has always been more transactional than truly loyal. It's based on mutual benefit rather than genuine affection. Fox gets ratings from Trump-friendly viewers. Trump gets a platform that generally treats him favorably. But when that transactional relationship produces coverage that Trump doesn't like, he's never hesitated to voice his displeasure publicly. So let's set the stage clearly before we head into the deep dive. This is a story about two genuinely real but completely separate media storylines.
New York Times versus Sullivan, that thing is under fire. What that means basically, you're a public figure, public entity, public company, public official. There's a standard. It's reckless disregard for the truth. It is, you have to show that you knowingly printed falsehoods or spoke them. And if Dominion had lost, Dominion's going to take this all the way to the Supreme Court. And two justices, Gorsuch and Thomas, are open to revisiting the landmark 1964 New York Times versus Sullivan, stripping that big threshold away, meaning, watch this one, Mayor Detroit's a crook. You're a crook, dude. See that? You ain't gonna come get me because there's foundation for that. But if I get something wrong, then all of a sudden it chills all of journalism, locally, statewide, nationally, internationally.
He's totally right, by the way. I'm not to interrupt you, Lindsay, but Charlie's totally right. If you are a believer in free speech, which I am, and I get buried in the press.
Trump's periodic criticism of Fox when specific coverage doesn't meet his expectations, and Fox's own internal reckoning during the Dominion litigation that got misleadingly combined into one exaggerated shutdown claim that doesn't accurately reflect either underlying event. And here's why that combination is such a particularly effective, if misleading, formula for generating attention online. Trump and Fox are both incredibly high-profile names on their own. Combining them with dramatic language about shutdowns and hidden recordings creates exactly the kind of headline designed to grab attention fast.
And I have standing because of that, I believe. You have to be for free speech. It holds the politicians accountable. It teaches our youth that they can be free in their thoughts. They lead to great economic innovation. So I am in favor of holding that standard. In Great Britain, they don't uphold that standard.
Exactly.
They don't have as many patents as we do.
The king can
many
sue
inventions because of that.
Right? The king can
I think
sue,
it's
yes.
important to reset, though. As somebody who went to school for journalism and really studied what's
Sorry
going
to hear
on.
that. You got that?
Yeah, I know.
Bad news.
But I think it's important to have a reset. So if we watch all the podcasts in different ways that you can consume endless information, which I think is a great thing, we also know the amount of misinformation that exists out there is because there's no disclaimer saying this is not somebody who knows all the facts, who did the research. And I think that's why we saw, like with Joe Rogan getting in a lot of trouble, saying this is not a news show. I think we have to differentiate. And I think that this trial would have set the parameters around how you decide who's the journalist and in that role. And as somebody who's done both, who's a political analyst, and what we're doing here.
Regardless of whether the underlying facts actually support that dramatic framing, once you dig into the real reporting. Think about the psychology behind why headlines like this spread so quickly. People already have strong assumptions about Trump's relationship with Fox. And a headline suggesting that relationship has dramatically ruptured taps directly into existing curiosity about whether that alliance might be cracking. That built-in interest makes these kinds of exaggerated claims spread faster than a more accurate but less dramatic description of specific media criticism ever could. Especially when the headline promises something as dramatic sounding as a hidden recording in a full network shutdown attempt. The emotional reaction is immediate. People either feel vindicated that their suspicions about Trump's authoritarian tendencies are confirmed, or they feel outraged at what they perceive as yet another attack on a friendly media outlet. Either way, they share it without checking the underlying facts. Now, let's slow down and actually walk through what happened here, because there's a real interesting story underneath this exaggerated headline. Trump posted on Truth Social, specifically criticizing Fox News for airing an interview with Senator Mark Kelly, a Democrat. His complaint centered on how that interview was handled, specifically that Kelly wasn't challenged hard enough during the conversation. Think about why this specific criticism actually matters within the broader context of Trump's relationship with Fox. Fox News has built much of its brand identity around being the network most closely aligned with Trump and conservative politics generally. So when Fox gives airtime to a Democratic senator and Trump feels that senator wasn't pushed hard enough on tough questions, that touches directly on Trump's expectations about how a friendly network should be operating. This kind of criticism from Trump toward Fox isn't actually new either. Throughout his time in politics, Trump has developed a well-documented pattern of publicly attacking media outlets whenever he feels their coverage isn't sufficiently favorable, or when he believes they're giving too much of a platform to his political opponents. That pattern applies to plenty of outlets across the political spectrum, but it's particularly notable when it involves Fox specifically, given how closely that network has generally been associated with Trump's political base. The expectation seems to be that Fox should operate more like a political ally than a journalistic enterprise, and when it doesn't, Trump feels entitled to call them out. Now, let's talk about why this specific instance generated so much attention beyond just being another example of Trump criticizing media coverage. Fox has occupied a genuinely unique position in conservative media for years, often treated as the default trusted source for Trump supporters. So when Trump publicly criticizes Fox specifically, that carries different weight than him criticizing outlets that have never been particularly friendly to him in the first place. It raises questions about tension within what's often assumed to be a completely aligned relationship between Trump and his most reliable media outlet. When the president attacks the network that's supposed to be on his side, people start wondering if something bigger is happening behind the scenes. Let's shift over to that hidden recording piece of the headline, because understanding what recordings actually exist here helps clarify why this headline ended up so misleading. The most significant hidden recording controversy connected to Fox News in recent years centers on the Dominion voting system's defamation case. During that lawsuit, internal Fox communications, including recordings and messages, became public through the legal discovery process, revealing that some Fox personalities privately expressed skepticism about certain election fraud claims, even while those same claims were being promoted on air. That Dominion case was genuinely massive, resulting in an enormous settlement and significant scrutiny of how Fox handled coverage around the 2020 election. But here's a crucial detail. None of that connects to Trump specifically trying to shut down Fox News. Those internal recordings expose tension within Fox itself between what personalities privately believed and what got broadcast publicly, not some effort by Trump to force the network's closure. So when this headline combines Trump's Fox criticism over the Kelly interview with language about hidden recordings and shutdown attempts, it's essentially mashing together two completely separate storylines that don't actually connect to each other in the way the headline implies. Trump's criticism was about specific interview handling. The hidden recordings controversy was about internal Fox communications during the Dominion litigation. Neither of these involves Trump attempting to force Fox to shut down as a network. Let's talk about why headlines like this one tend to spread so effectively, even when they're genuinely misleading. Trump and Fox make for a compelling storyline combination on their own, given how closely associated they've generally been throughout his political career. Add language suggesting a dramatic falling out, a shutdown attempt, a hidden recording scandal, and you've got exactly the kind of headline that generates strong emotional reactions and rapid sharing, regardless of whether the underlying facts actually support that dramatic framing. The headline promises drama, conflict, and revelation, and in the current media environment, that combination is irresistible to many people. Here's something worth understanding about Trump's broader pattern of media criticism, because it helps put this specific Fox situation into proper context. Trump has criticized virtually every major media outlet at various points throughout his political career, ranging from outlets widely seen as hostile toward him to outlets generally considered friendly or aligned with his political positions. This pattern suggests Trump's media criticism often centers on specific coverage decisions he disagrees with in the moment, rather than reflecting some permanent fixed relationship with any particular outlet. So Trump criticizing Fox over the Kelly interview fits within that broader, well-established pattern, not as some unprecedented rupture in their relationship, but as one more example of Trump publicly voicing displeasure whenever specific coverage doesn't align with his preferences, regardless of which outlet happens to be involved in that particular moment. Now, let's dig a little deeper into the Dominion case itself, because it's genuinely one of the more significant media controversies in recent years, and it deserves proper explanation on its own terms. Dominion Voting Systems, a company that provides voting machines and technology, sued Fox News for defamation, arguing the network knowingly promoted false claims about their voting systems being connected to fraud in the 2020 election. During the legal discovery process for that lawsuit, internal Fox communications became public, including messages and recordings showing that some Fox personalities and executives privately expressed serious doubts about the very election fraud claims their network was promoting on air. That gap between what got broadcast publicly and what people privately believed internally became a massive part of the case and generated enormous public attention. Fox ultimately settled that lawsuit for a substantial amount of money, one of the largest media defamation settlements in history. That settlement and the internal recordings that came out during the case represent the real significant hidden recording controversy connected to Fox News in recent memory. But again, none of that involves Trump personally trying to force Fox to shut down. It involves questions about how Fox internally handled coverage of election fraud claims during that specific period. Let's also spend a little more time understanding the broader significance of the Dominion settlement itself, because it represents a genuinely landmark moment in media accountability, regardless of its lack of connection to this specific Trump Fox. Headline: defamation lawsuits against major media companies rarely result in settlements of this size, and the internal recordings that emerged during that case fundamentally shape public understanding of how Fox handled election coverage during a critical period in recent American political history. That settlement also raised broader questions about the relationship between what media companies broadcast publicly and what their own personalities privately believe. A tension that extends well beyond just this one specific case. Understanding that broader significance helps explain why the Dominion recordings became such a major story on their own, completely independent of any connection to Trump's separate, specific criticism of the Kelly interview. Now, let's think about Trump's specific complaint regarding the Kelly interview a little more carefully, because understanding exactly what bothered him helps explain the broader pattern at play here. His criticism centered specifically on the interview not being challenged hard enough, suggesting he felt Fox gave Senator Kelly an easier platform than he believed was appropriate for a Democratic lawmaker. That kind of complaint reflects Trump's broader expectation that friendly outlets should actively push back against opposing political viewpoints rather than simply providing neutral airtime. That expectation itself reveals something interesting about how Trump views the role of media outlets generally. Rather than treating journalism as primarily about neutral information delivery, his criticism suggests an expectation that supportive outlets should actively advocate for his political positions during interviews with opponents, not just report on what those opponents say. That's a meaningfully different standard than traditional journalistic neutrality. And it helps explain why even outlets generally aligned with Trump periodically draw his public criticism whenever specific coverage doesn't meet that more combative standard. It's a fundamental disagreement about what the role of media should be in a democratic society. And it creates ongoing tension between Trump and virtually every news organization, including those that are generally favorable to him. It's also worth thinking about how Fox itself likely navigates these periodic criticisms from Trump. As a business, Fox has to balance maintaining credibility with a broad audience, including viewers who expect at least some standard of balanced coverage, against maintaining the loyalty of its core audience, many of whom are strongly aligned with Trump specifically. That balancing act means Fox occasionally makes coverage decisions, like airing a Democratic senator's interview, that satisfy broader journalistic expectations, even when those same decisions draw criticism from Trump himself. That tension between broad credibility and base loyalty is likely to keep producing similar moments of friction going forward, regardless of how any single specific incident gets resolved. Let's think about the relationship between Trump and Fox more broadly. It's often described as symbiotic, but that description might be too simple. Fox provides Trump with something he desperately craves, a platform where he's generally treated favorably and where his message can reach millions of supportive viewers. Trump provides Fox with something it desperately craves, ratings and relevance among a conservative audience that might otherwise drift to other media sources. But this symbiosis has limits. Fox is still a business that needs to maintain some credibility with advertisers and with viewers who expect at least occasional journalistic independence. And Trump is still a politician who demands absolute loyalty and becomes furious when he doesn't get it. The tensions that periodically erupt between Trump and Fox are a natural result of this complicated relationship. Trump wants Fox to be a propaganda outlet that serves his interests exclusively. Fox wants to be a news organization that serves its audience while maintaining enough credibility to remain viable as a business. These two goals are fundamentally in tension, and that tension produces periodic conflicts like the one we're discussing. The interesting thing is that neither side ever walks away from this relationship completely. Trump needs Fox as much as Fox needs Trump. So they have these periodic spats, both sides express their displeasure, and then they settle back into the same uneasy alliance they've had for years. This dynamic isn't unique to Trump and Fox. It's similar to the relationship between any politician and their most friendly media outlet. The outlet wants to maintain some independence. The politician wants total loyalty, and both sides have to navigate that tension while maintaining a relationship that benefits both of them. What makes the Trump-Fox relationship different is the intensity of the personalities involved and the high stakes of the political environment they operate in. When Trump criticizes Fox, it's not a quiet, private conversation. It's a public spectacle on social media that reaches millions of people. And when Fox makes a coverage decision that displeases Trump, it's not a minor editorial choice. It's a major story that gets analyzed and debated endlessly. So where does that leave us heading into the breakdown? You've got Trump publicly criticizing Fox News specifically for airing Senator Mark Kelly's interview and complaining it wasn't handled with enough scrutiny. You've got Trump's well-documented, long-standing pattern of attacking media outlets when their coverage displeases him, a pattern that applies broadly across the media landscape. And you've got the actual hidden recording controversy connected to Fox, which involves a completely separate Dominion defamation case with no connection to Trump attempting any kind of shutdown. That's the real documented story here, involving genuine media tension without needing any exaggerated shutdown framing attached to it. Now, let's talk about why conflating these two stories, Trump's Kelly interview criticism and the Dominion recordings, creates such a misleading overall picture. The Dominion case timeline and the Kelly interview criticism happened at different points, involve completely different underlying issues, and involve different specific parties within the broader Fox and Trump relationship. Smashing them together into one headline about a shutdown attempt over a hidden recording creates a narrative that simply doesn't match the actual documented timeline of either separate event. It's like taking a story about someone criticizing a restaurant's food and combining it with a completely different story about a health code violation at that restaurant, and then claiming the person's criticism was about the health code violation. All right, let's break this down into simple pieces, because untangling these separate storylines really is the key to understanding what actually happened here. Trump's criticism of Fox over the Mark Kelly interview is real and documented, but it's specifically about how that particular interview was handled, not some broader shutdown effort against the network. Understanding that specific trigger matters because it shows this was a targeted criticism of one piece of coverage, not an attack on Fox's entire existence as a network. The Dominion-related hidden recordings are a completely separate story from Trump's Fox criticism entirely. Those recordings exposed internal tension within Fox itself between what personalities privately believed and what got broadcast, connected to a massive defamation lawsuit that had nothing to do with Trump trying to shut the network down. Trump's broader pattern of criticizing media outlets, including ones generally considered friendly to him, actually tells you something important about how his media relationships work. This isn't a permanent alliance immune to criticism. It's a relationship that shifts based on specific coverage decisions Trump agrees or disagrees with in any given moment, applying that same pattern across virtually the entire media landscape. And the way this headline combines two unrelated storylines, Trump's specific interview criticism and Fox's separate hidden recording controversy, shows exactly how misleading headlines get constructed. Taking two genuinely real but completely unrelated events and combining them into one dramatic-sounding claim creates something that sounds explosive but doesn't actually match any single real event that happened. So why does all this actually matter to you watching this video right now? Because understanding the real specific nature of Trump's media criticism rather than an exaggerated shutdown narrative gives you a much more accurate picture of how his relationship with even historically friendly outlets like Fox actually works. That relationship involves genuine tension and criticism when coverage doesn't align with his expectations, but it doesn't involve him attempting to force any network's closure. Who benefits from this kind of misleading framing? Honestly, probably content creators who generate more engagement from a dramatic shutdown narrative than from an accurate description of Trump criticizing a specific interview segment. That's exactly why headlines get stretched this way. Dramatic framing generates more clicks and shares than a careful, accurate breakdown of what actually happened ever could. What happens next? Well, Trump's pattern of publicly criticizing media coverage, including from outlets generally considered friendly, is likely to continue, as it has throughout his political career, whenever specific coverage decisions don't match his preferences. And Fox's broader relationship with Trump and with conservative media more generally continues evolving based on these kinds of periodic tensions, without any indication of the kind of dramatic rupture this misleading headline suggests. The relationship will continue to have its ups and downs. There will be more public criticisms. There will be more coverage decisions that displease Trump. But neither side is going to walk away from a relationship that benefits both of them in significant ways. Look, at the end of the day, here's the simple version. Trump publicly criticized Fox News for airing an interview with Democratic Senator Mark Kelly, specifically complaining the interview wasn't challenged enough. That fits within Trump's well-documented broader pattern of attacking media outlets whenever coverage displeases him. Separately, the most notable hidden recording controversy connected to Fox involves the Dominion defamation case, exposing internal tension within the network itself with no connection to any Trump shutdown attempt. That's not a rumor. That's not some dramatic shutdown headline. That's the real documented reality behind two genuinely separate storylines that got misleadingly combined into one exaggerated claim, stitched together simply because both stories happen to involve Fox News. So keep your eyes open, because Trump's ongoing relationship with media outlets across the political spectrum, including Fox specifically, remains a genuinely interesting storyline worth watching. And next time we sit down, we're going to dig into exactly how that Dominion-related controversy actually played out, and whether Fox's coverage decisions continue shaping his relationship with Trump going forward. The media landscape is constantly evolving, and the relationship between politicians and the outlets that cover them is always in flux. Understanding the real dynamics at play is essential for anyone who wants to make sense of the news. And one more thing worth sitting with before we wrap up. It's easy to see a headline about Trump trying to shut down Fox and assume something genuinely unprecedented happened between them. But the real documented reality, periodic public criticism when specific coverage doesn't align with expectations, a completely separate hidden recording controversy tied to a massive defamation lawsuit, is far more nuanced and honestly far more interesting once you understand the actual details than any single exaggerated shutdown claim could ever capture. That's really the bigger picture underneath all of this. Not some dramatic attempt to force a major network's closure, but a genuine, ongoing pattern of Trump publicly voicing displeasure with specific media coverage playing out alongside a completely separate, genuinely significant controversy about internal Fox communications during the Dominion litigation. And honestly, that's the part that should stick with you long after this video ends. It's easy to see a headline about Trump trying to shut down a major network and assume something dramatic and unprecedented occurred. But the confirmed reality here: periodic public criticism over specific coverage decisions, a landmark defamation settlement involving internal recordings from an entirely different timeline, is far more nuanced and honestly far more informative about how Trump's media relationships actually work than any single exaggerated shutdown claim could ever fully capture. So, next time you see a headline combining two big names with dramatic language about shutdowns, hidden recordings, or explosive revelations, take a moment and ask whether those specific elements actually connect to each other in the real reporting, or whether they're being borrowed from separate, unrelated stories to create maximum dramatic effect. The pattern of stitching unrelated real events into dramatic fiction is widespread across political content. Recognizing it helps you spot manipulation, avoid confusion, and focus on genuine issues. In today's media environment, distinguishing real reporting from dramatic fiction is an essential skill.